Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
How's everybody doing? Can everybody hear us? Yes, awesome. Okay, we're going to start this panel. Brigadier Basin, I'm going to start with you.
Oh my, okay, go ahead.
Leadership mindset shift. Let's talk about that. Like founders must transform from innovators to leaders. So what is your take on that?
So my take on this is that when a person has a business idea and he can organize money for it, he becomes a business owner or a founder or a startup, whatever you call him. But as you go along, there's something more important, and that is to become a leader. A business owner must become a business leader. Reason that to start up it's easy. The early problems are not many because what is happening is that you are so fascinated with your idea, you have that idea very clearly in your mind and you start working on it, and very soon your main clients, your focused clients diminish because you're all starting with people who know you, they trust you and all that. But in any business, there should be a continuous flow of more leads coming in, and that doesn't happen. So to grow, you need to now have a team. You have to scale up. You must have more clients. You must have more visibility. And for all that now, you have to be a leader. You have to get work done out of a team. So you then don't do things, you get things done. That in that process, unless you become a leader, which means that you have a vision, you know what you want to achieve, and then you know the way of how to do it, where you adapt to the environment. A leader has to be very adaptive. So here now, as you move along, the water flows in its own direction. If you understand that and keep guiding people according to that, so that means your communication, your trust, your team building, all that comes in. And that is where I think the main issue lies, where early adopters have a problem of how to get out of that sphere of the few people you knew, the great idea you had, you didn't test it properly, it was not a proven idea, and you jump into the market. So that's my take on it.
Yes, and that's where leaders also thrive, in the sense that you know how to form the team, not only form the team, but how to guide them to the goal or the mission you have that you want to achieve.
Yeah, so very simply put, I say how to build and lead high-performing teams. So first you should know how to build them, get the right people in the right place.
Well.
And once you got the right people in the right place, now it is important for you to lead them in a way to get the best out of them. Yeah. And that is something which, in my own experience of 21 years in the corporate world, after 34 years in the army, I felt that this is one place where people are not really good. You have a person you employ a person means you buy his 8 hours of time. But he's only working 4 hours effectively, and 4 hours he's unproductive. So now a good leader should be able to make that team more productive, which means everyone should give the maximum, because you can trace out your balance sheet for every other loss, but this loss is never traceable. That the 4 hours if a person worked, the 4 hours of the salary you gave him has actually gone waste. And that loss is not traceable, not trackable.
Brigadier, I'll share a story that I once heard from one of the soldiers in the US Army who was leading a team. And he said that, we went for a mission, and I guided every soldier in my team what each of their role was. And when one did not do what he was asked to do, I never blamed that person. I blamed myself. that I did not guide them good enough, that there was a gap in communication. So that is what a leader does, that they take the blame on themselves, that why is my team not performing to the level I am expecting them to do? Where is the gap between my communication with them? So that is what a true leader does.
Yeah, and now the two gentlemen on my sides have not spoken, and I do feel guilty.
We'll give everybody their chance.
But I'll just add something to that, when I was doing the staff college in Wellington in 83, we had a commandant who said this exactly like what you're saying. He said that because you're taught staff work. So he says if you send out an instruction, which means your communication, and there is somebody at the other end who asks you a question. For example, you're given all instructions about an event, and he says, sir, but what dress are we to wear? That means you forgot one element of it, that you forgot one particular part of the instruction which is incomplete. He says, just look at yourself and say, I did not communicate well enough.
Yes.
And the communication has to be so complete. So I've done a complete LinkedIn post which went viral. I mean, that's the only viral post I have on LinkedIn on communications where I said this. Thank you.
My next question is to Dr. Kotlin. And the question is, what type of leadership is needed to go fast?
Thank you, Amina. One thing is very clear, is that you are not born a leader. Nobody will tell you, please be a smart leader, a transformational leader, a 360 leader, a total leader, like we say at Leadership Management International. And we've trained more than 2 million leaders around the world in the last 40 years. So you are not born a leader. You need to have, what Boyatsis called the intention to change your behaviors. You need courage, you need determination, you need a clear vision, and you need to be self-aware of the different steps that will be needed to build your leadership. In any organizations, you have usually 10% of positive actors, 80% of spectators, and 10% of negative actors. So the challenge, because not everybody wants to become a leader. You need to take the decision to grow your skills, to put your activities in perspective, especially if you are in a startup business. And we've incubated, I've worked in private banks for many years, we've incubated many startup companies in digital banking, in impact investing. And the CEO we hired were very young professionals, but not all of them had the global quality to build their leadership. So of course some of these companies failed, but some others, a minority, were very successful. Why? Because the CEO took the decision, and the board, to build their leadership skills. And how do you do that? There's a clear methodology to build your leadership skills. First, as I said, you need to have the intention and the will to build it and to develop these skills. First, you focus on your personal productivity. What are you really able to deliver as a professional? Good question. The second is your personal leadership. Are you doing something which is close to your values, to your purpose, that fits your life mission and purpose? The third is the motivational leadership. Are you able to build great teams, to motivate the teams around you and the C-suite, but not just the C-suite members, also, the N-1, -5, etc. What are you doing in terms of what I called the communication leadership? Are you a good communicator? Are you able to share your values, your mission, on a very repetitive way, redundant way? Redundancy is a key ingredient of communication. And the fourth steps to build your leadership is the strategic leadership. Do you have a long-term vision, not a 2 or 4 years? Do you have a 5, 10, 15 years vision to build your leadership? Are you able to share and to convince investors that you're going to develop the company thanks to cross-border various type of investments with a clear strategy? And the strategy, we say, is 5% of your time. The rest is implementation, execution, and you better do it right, and you better have this flexible type of leadership to adapt and to be very agile, to adapt your leadership in a fast-changing environment.
So while Samina is looking for the next question or something, I'll just add a little to this. I totally agree with Jerome. Jerome, yeah. So only one thing I'd like to add is that in military leadership, I understood one thing, that the first thing you start with is self-leadership. Because if you can't lead yourself, if you don't understand what I am, and leadership is also a very it's a great psychological game, which means you must know your mind and your heart, because I feel that the transformation happens in the heart and not in the mind. So I always say, am I able to shift your heart set more than mindset? So one is your own mind, and second is, can you read the mind of the other person so that you can mold. All the words that he used are so important. Agility, adaptability, flexibility. These are very, very important, and each one of them matters. Thank you.
So my question now is to Mr. Arunachalam. How do you balance rapid growth and global 360 leadership?
Okay, that's an interesting question. For me, rapid growth is a consequence, right? So it's not something, it's not a target. Yeah. Speed is not a target, right? What we want is, when we talk about growth, we want to essentially reach the outcome. And one of the things that 90% of the products, great products with product market fit, actually fail. And the reason they fail is your first 10 customers want outcomes. Then the rest of the 10,000 actually want reliability. So speed actually has to result in that reliability. So all the 360-degree feedback, and when we talk about that, whether it is coming from employees, coming from customers, coming from your suppliers, the intention has to be the same, right? Is it going to help me with the outcome? And any speed that does not help me with the outcome is essentially chaos. So it has to line up well with where I'm going. It has to be a consequence. And one of the responsibility of a leader in that regard is going to be I clear the blockers, right? I set the target and I clear the blockers. So my team essentially knows where they are going and what's the next step that they need to achieve in order for me to go there. And my responsibility, once they know that, is to ensure that there aren't any blockers. And those blockers could be from outside or sometimes could be from within inside. You have to make those tough calls and keep moving on, because that includes the founder, right? The founder who is great at innovation and setup is not going to be the person who can run the company when it scales. So we need to all learn to actually find the right people for the job and keep moving on, because it's like I said, the speed it will come if we have all those things set up in your company.
The right people in the team that, when you give instructions, they can just take off with it and run with it, right, basically. Yeah.
See, organization is no different from what we see in the society, right? If you don't evolve, you perish. 99% of the species that we found around us don't exist anymore. So same holds good for the company. The people who are there with you when you found it may not be the people you need or can manage when you scale up. So if you're going global, you need people who understand the nuances of different cultures. You need to be able to set direction, but I can't for example, I'm sitting out of Sydney. I have no idea of how the company needs to be run, the nuances of the culture that are there in UAE or in US or somewhere in Germany, right? You need people who can understand that, and what you're going to do is, your job as a leader is to set that direction so that the company moves forward, not just the fact that I can micromanage them from that distance. So that's the way we operate. It's, again, different companies have different ways to do it. This is what we feel as early adopters, and when you're trying to scale up in the market, something that will work.
My next question, I'm going to start with you.
Okay.
And we'll the same question to all three of you. How to balance performance and smart behaviors?
Okay. Firstly, I don't think it's a dichotomy, because one without the performance as performance. What was the other part? Behaviors. Performance without behavior is going to result in a bad outcome, and great performance in poor behavior is going to result in your company going down, and great behavior without performance is going to result in a bad product. So for me, it's a balance of the two. And one thing that when I started the company, one thing I always knew was I need to make the tough calls when it comes to that. So if there are people for whom, if I have to put it in the order, the behaviors don't line up, that's the first thing to go, right? Because you cannot have bad behavior. That's going to ruin the rest of the company. Performance can be managed to a certain extent, but after that, it is horses for courses.
And for me, coming from the real estate world and working in a team, if you're not a team player, that also has a heavy hit. If you're not a team player, you're trying to do things your own way. You're not gathering the people who can help you get further in life or get further in your mission, then that also affects big time.
See, at the risk of sounding like I'm from a B school, culture eats strategy for breakfast, right? So if you have wrong people in your company, or if you don't have the right people, or if you are not strong enough to remove the wrong people from your company, in many instances, you are not going to succeed. That's the reality of it. Because if you don't do that, what you're going to do is encourage behaviors that are not going to be conducive for the rest of the company to perform well, and you are going to, as an organization, we are going to feel the pinch.
Brigadier, your turn on
Okay,
how
so
to
firstly,
balance performance.
we don't have anything called right people or wrong people. So the moment my friend Arun, I'll call him Arun. Huh? Well, the moment you say right and wrong, it is with a particular perspective. And therefore, I'll say we are not right or wrong people, we are different people, and we need to understand each other and coexist despite our differences. That is what a real good team is. Now, I'll bring another aspect of what we are talking about and actually compare your performance with trust, one of the behaviors, to give you a real example. So, if you draw a graph with performance on the vertical axis and trust on the x-axis, you will find that the left quadrant, which is low trust and low performance, nobody wants. Cut it out. On the top right is a quadrant which is high trust, high performance. Everyone wants that. But in the corporate world, there is no way of, in your recruitment, you don't have trust or you don't have behavioral performance or, a behavioral indicator. All your recruitment processes are only based on performance and nothing else. So therefore, you mostly hire people for skill and not for will. You don't know how good this person will be in the behavior. And here I qualify that when you say good, I mean a person whose behavior fits into the organizational culture. And that's another subject. Organizational culture. Everything happens in a company because of the culture that has been established. So, a little difference in the army is that when we hire people, we don't have just an interview and a resume. We have something else. We have a 5-day selection process. And in that 5-day selection process, you go through a psychologist, you go through a group test. All that is going to build up your behavior more than your performance. And therefore, in the army, we'll rather take a person with low performance and high trust than to take the other way around, a person with high performance and low trust. So the trust part of it, as one of the behavior patterns, is one of the very important thing that keeps the team together. It is a glue, it is that force, it's that Fevicol which keeps the team together. And that is one thing that when it takes years to build it up, but it takes just a few seconds to break it. And once it's broken, very difficult to get it back to the same place. Thank you.
Thank
Dr.
you.
Kaushal, your turn.
I totally agree. I think, we shouldn't split performance and behaviors. They are very closely linked together. Performance is really focusing on hard skills and behavior on soft skills. And how do you find the right balance in terms of leadership? The issue is that 70% of companies are experiencing a leadership gap and leadership difficulties and leadership deficiencies. And by the way, the two major topics we all in this room and around the world are going to deal with in the coming 10 or 15 years is the first one, everything which is AI related, and the second, everything which is related to personal development, which has to do with how you adapt and change your behaviors. There's a great book, probably you've read it, from James Clear, called Atomic Habits. We all have good and bad habits, and the challenge is how to move your bad habits to positive habits. But to do that, you need to transform yourself and to change your behaviors and to adapt your behaviors. As I said before, you need to have the deep desire and the deep intention to change your behaviors and to adapt to a very fast-changing environment. And I just want to share with you what I usually call the 3 E's. To develop smart leadership, you need the 3 E's. The first E is energy. What level of energy do you have as a person, as an individual, as a leader, every day, day in, day out? If you're a CEO, you can't go to the office being depressed. So energy. The second E is energize. How do you motivate your team? But not just your team, your shareholders as well, and convince them to invest in a specific program. And your stakeholders. So the second E is energize. But all these, the first 2 E is related to behaviors. And the third E is related to hard skills and performance, is execute. Are you able to deliver the financial results which are expected by the company? So the 3 E, energy, energize, execute, is a good way to encapsulate, smart, transformative, and 360 type of leadership today.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Dr. Kaushal. So at this point, I'm going to open the stage to the audience and see if anybody has any questions in this topic. We have about 5 minutes, so we can just discuss. So anybody wants to ask, please come to the mic and ask your question to our 3 panelists.
Good morning, panelists. Hello, am I audible? I think I'm audible.
Yeah, you are audible. Go ahead.
So, morning, panelists. Just had a couple of questions, related questions. First, thank you for the insights because they were really hard-hitting, I must say. Each one of you gave us some very sharp insights. One thing that I wanted to ask was, we were speaking about the early adopter curve, which means the business is launched, people have adopted. We know there is success at the end of the tunnel. That being said, you spoke about right fit, wrong fit, which Brigadier said that it's all people and we need to figure out how to balance. And so you gave the E3 model, which is very easy as it sounds, but not easy to implement. So how do we communicate if someone is really the right fit for a particular role when we are growing, and if they are not and the trust is falling? How do we communicate all this to ensure that the rhythm of the organization doesn't suffer when we are growing for the exclusive?
I'll start. Yeah. Yeah, sure. See, very valid question, right? Because we have all been there. You start something, you are the only person with the knowledge, you are the only person with the idea, you have probably got the next 25 steps sorted out in your head. You, it's also not the time where you can afford I'll avoid upsetting the brigadier, so I'll say person who is not fit, right? So you need not the wrong person, because you can't put a salesperson into a developer role and expect that person to perform, right? It's ridiculous. So what you are going to do at that time is find the right person for the job, and for a person who will be able to get through to the first stage of this, right? Because there are people who will be excellent at that. And I know founders who are excellent till the product gets, or till the company gets out of the startup mode, post which they want to exit. So you always will have to find the right person who can do that, right? So that's one. So you identify the right person who can take this plunge, because that stage 2 product market fit is always both exciting and extremely chaotic. So the role of a leader there is very different. You are going to you need people who can adapt, and also at the same time you need people who will be able to take the instructions. You should also be able to communicate this very clearly, because otherwise it's going around in circles, right? So that leadership, the leadership that you exhibit at that point, is very different from once you get there and you start to look at scaling, where you, like I said, the next 10,000 want reliable service. At that time, what you need to do is build a team around you that can take this forward, right? Essentially, you are trying to create not clones, but people who are able to do the same thing with their own flair and their own flavor. So that's how I look at each of these. It's not the same problem or the same approach, but it comes to the same point. Are you hiring? Are you looking for the right skills and performance and measures and behaviors in the team members for that particular role?
Yeah, so I want to add this that as an agile military leader, I will agree with him now that in this context, in this context, the right and the wrong could be very well used. So you want to put the right person in the right place. And a very small story will tell you what I'm wanting to express here. There are some instruments. So when I got out of the army and I came into the corporate world, somebody asked me, which instruments do you use? So I said, what? I'm neither a carpenter nor a gardener. I don't use instruments. And then I got to know that there were some behavioral instruments which are called your psychometric tests. And I learned one of them and we used it. And this is called extended disk. So we have an individual report and a team report there. So we did it for a company, and then we were giving the presentation. When I say we, there's a lady called Nanda Dave who I learnt it all from. So she was with me and we did it together. And now she's giving a presentation to the CEO and saying, this is your team report. And these are not the people who fit in here, they fit in better here. So you put this person in finance under this chap. She is not going to be able to match up with this person. Her behavior doesn't match here. You must do this. And you know what this man did? So, oh my God. I wish you told me 2 or 3 weeks earlier, this lady has just left us. She said, I can tell you I am not an astrologer, but I can tell you that these two people cannot work together. So today, with the type of, I won't say instruments, I'll say with the type of technology, with the type of human behavior studies available, we must use these more than just our instinct and use them to the best of your knowledge, because what will happen here is, for example, for all my leadership programs, I won't say insist, but I influence a company to take this extended disk before they come to me for leadership and team building, because then I know that this person is a C-type person. He's a compliance person. He will not take initiative. He will go by numbers. He will not go by emotions. So therefore, you have to understand the behavior of the other people and also understand your behavior. So if you know answer to why am I doing what I'm doing and what is this person doing, what they are doing, you will not be able to get this right mix. And this is one of the best ways I learned after coming from the army. In the army, we had different ways. Okay, but I'm not going into all that. I'll bring this perspective, use these type of psychometric tests. You'll get a very accurate way of knowing which behavior is fitting into which scene, and you put them in the right place. Thank you.
Thank you. When you're a CEO incubator and that you are hiring people, you can either choose loyalty or competencies, right? Try always to pick up competent people. You don't need loyal people around you. A smart, a transformational leader will ask to be challenged every day. He will ask for feedback, not just for feedback, because feedback, we talk a bit about feedback, but feedback is about, is regarding the past. So we talk very much in our leadership development programs on feedback and feed forward. What are we building all together? And maybe you've read this very interesting article of Jim Collins in the Harvard Business Review about level 5 type of leaders. They've studied 1,500 leaders around the world. What are the differentiating factors of these level 5 type of leaders? First, they have a very long-term vision. They've been in office not just for 2 or 4 years, like most of the CEOs, but for 10 years, 15 years. The second, they have a high level of determination in what they do. They know they're going to be crises. They know they're going to be hurdles to go through. I had to manage the Madoff crisis for 5 years. That's why I have some gray hair now in a private bank. And the third is humility. They are very humble people. Humble, modest, which means that they are very open to get challenged. So they're going to look for competent people rather than loyal people. So when you enter into an organization and that you see that around the CEO, you have a lot of loyalty, it's a wrong governance. You should have competent people challenging yourself day in, day out, which doesn't mean that they cannot become friends at the end of the journey. And a last comment on communication, because I come from marketing and communication world, and I've been a journalist and a war reporter for 10 years. Communication is in everything, and everything is in communication. I often ask the question to our clients, why do we communicate? Why do we communicate? Well, we communicate because we want to share information. We communicate because we want to convince the others, the clients, the market, the shareholders, the stakeholders. And we communicate, this is the soft skills and the behaviors, because we want to seduce. Share, convince, and seduce. And this is what we call performative communication. It's a performance. So a good CEO should be a great communicator or should work on his communication skills, because every day he will need to share and convince and explain what's the purpose. And he will need to be very redundant, once again, in the way he communicates, because he wants to convince as many people as possible. And that's why in marketing, we talk a lot about love mark in branding. What these love mark create, all the great brands we know. Well, they create loyalty beyond reason. Loyalty which is beyond reason, which makes you automatically, follow up these great brands.
So I like to really take on this beautiful way he's explained, and I resonate entirely with that. John C. Maxwell said that leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. So he said seduce, and I normally use the word influence, and I normally would say there's a difference between convincing and influencing. And I would go for the shade of influencing as a leader more than convincing. Because that is long lasting. It brings you, when you're influenced, it becomes an inspiration instead of a motivation. Motivation is external, inspiration is internal. It's internally driven. So in communication, I want to say one thing. When I communicate with you, which means there is some thought, some idea, some experience that I want to share with you, so I tell it out. And when I do that, if I am able to do it in a way that you got the complete sense of it, you understand exactly what I said, and not what a child tells a mother, Mama, I thought you meant this. So, what you say is not what you mean, and what you mean is not what you say, then you are not a good communicator. But more importantly, am I a good influencer? So if I am, let's say, on the stage talking about yoga, and each one of you understand yoga very well just the way I did, but only 5 of you took up the yoga mat next morning and started doing yoga. So for those 5 people, I am an influencer. For the others, you were only a communicator. So as a professional speaker, when I stand on the stage, I look at what do I want my audience to think, feel, and do after this session. And if I look at that and concentrate on that, and that's what I learned when I unlearned my military type of thinking when I used to go on the stage, because I spoke to a captive audience. I never had to care about whether they will listen to me or not. They had to. But when I now became a professional speaker, I know people start walking out so audience became the king. And I realized that when I stand on the stage, and so as a leader, you are not the hero, your story is. You are not the hero, your ideas are. Focus on the content and not on the author. Right? That makes a lot of difference. So I'll come to something which I did in a communication workshop recently. And I said, see, now I'm saying the idea I had, I communicated to you, which means I passed it on to you. Right? But where did that idea come from? That came from something called the inner voice, the inner communication, which is saying, should I say this or should I not say this? Will I say something which will annoy him? Oh, I shouldn't say that. All that tussle that went out in your mind was the noise that is created in your mind. Until you first silence that, bring your mind to a stability, form that communication, that message, and then transmit it. Till then, you're going to be confused. So, brings to clarity. That communication has to be clarity. Clarity has to be that firstly, internal communication has to be good before it becomes a good external communication. And when I'm talking of clarity, it is all about eradicating the unwanted. Right? I think we have a little time. I'll tell you this. I wanted to buy a very good camera, or a phone with a good camera. So I asked my son, and he gave me a model. I bought that, very good camera. And then when I started taking pictures, I was not finding them as clear as his pictures were. And he takes a picture from the same phone, which is much better than mine. And I said, how do you do that? And he says, Dad, when did you clean the lens? I said, never do it. So he said, that's the problem. So then when he cleaned the lens and showed me, the results were very good. So he says, there is dust on your lens, you will not get a clear picture. Similarly, when there's a dust, there's a fog in my mind, my communication cannot be clear. So eradicate that first. And I'll end by saying that a sculptor has a very clear image of a statue that he wants. So what he's doing, he's scraping the unwanted, and that statue emerges. So if you eradicate all the unwanted stuff, you will get the real clarity. And it is for all leaders to go 1 inch wide and 1 mile deep. And many of us like I was always 1 inch deep and 1 mile wide. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else have any questions? Okay, so we'll wrap up today. Thank you.
I would just say one thing. We're talking so much about communication. If you get a chance, just go and see my LinkedIn little post on just this part of clarity in communication. Thank you.
May I
And,
just...
and for
may I
my
ju-
end, I will say that I did a TED Talk, and my TED Talk was the 3 principles of communication that connects the world. So I would like you to go and see that on YouTube.
I just would like to add something, as we have a few minutes. You know, we talk about, 360 leaders, transformational leaders, global leaders. And I think, to be a smart leader is really a mindset, to develop your mindset. Smart leaders are very often unsatisfied, but they're never dissatisfied. So there is a distinguo, when you are unsatisfied is that you are challenging yourself. You ask others to challenge you. You want to be challenged. And you, once again, there are going to be some tough times, some questions that you're going to have. But be unsatisfied is a very dynamic mindset without being dissatisfied, because when you are dissatisfied, means that you are a bit depressed, your blackjack, etc. So there's a distinguo. This to say that it's a mindset, and you work on this mindset, and you decide to be a global leader, and then you accept that you will be very often unsatisfied, but that's fine. It brings also a lot of joy in your professional activity, because you are building great teams, great projects, and great business.
Thank you, Dr. Kosmik. Thank you.